Hi everybody, Brian Davis. Welcome to Hook'em.com. I'm here with our columnist Kirk Bohls and our Big 12 writer Kevin Lyttle, and we're going to talk about Big 12 expansion. Guys, look, everyone is all up in arms about this, but let's cut to the real heart of the matter. Should the Big 12 even expand at all?
I'd say no, because I just don't believe in the upside. Okay. I just think the pool of attractive candidates, well, it's the kiddie pool, it's the waiting pool, and that's part of the problem. It'd be like the United States wanting to add 2 more states. Let's add Ecuador and Guatemala just to have a number, and I don't believe in that. Okay. So I think that hurts the expansion talk. So I would say no, go with the status quo.
Kevin?
Well, I think that the Big 12 probably does need to expand, because if you're not expanding, you might as well be contracting. And I think this thing is heading towards 64 teams, 4 conferences of 16 each. Big 12 is 10 right now, so it better start beefing up with whatever it can get.
Okay, so now we know that Ecuador and Guatemala are possible expansion targets. Let's talk about why expansion is a good thing. There's a pro and con to this. Why do you think that the Big 12 should expand?
Well, I think the Big 12 can do itself a lot of good by having a conference championship game and adding teams and having 2 divisions. And there are a few attractive targets out there, starting with BYU in my book.
Mm-hmm. Now, Kirk, you in the paper, you started out that you were sort of lukewarm to the idea, but now I think you're kind of against it completely.
Expansion?
Yes.
Well, again, it goes to the appeal or lack thereof of the candidates. There's not many candidates with a national brand, okay? As Kevin pointed out, if you expand to 12 or even more, okay, you have your football championship game, which they can anyway with 10, but if you have 10, you're going to have a rematch for sure. Maybe with 12 or 14, you don't have a rematch. So, you know, on that standpoint, it makes a little sense. And one thing DeLoss Dodds told me is that you need voices at the table. And as Kevin said, if we go to these mega super conferences of 16, you only have 10, you don't have as many voices at the table, hence you don't have as much clout. So from that standpoint, it would make some sense.
That's true. Okay, so if we're talking about looking for voices or looking for clout, there's tons of candidates that are always mentioned in this argument. Kevin, if you had to pick today, who would you want first on the list of expansion?
Well, I'd start with BYU because to me, they check basically all the boxes. They have Power 5 facilities. They draw Power 5 crowds. Actually, their stadium size and attendances would be right behind Texas and Oklahoma in the Big 12. They come in and would fit right into me from a lot of aspects.
Okay, now Kirk, I personally think Cincinnati should be in the mix. I think Cincinnati would be the 11th team ahead of anyone else before you find a team. Now, the problem is I don't think there's a 12th team.
But no, they're not going to go to 11. We know that.
Right, can't go to 11.
So who's your 12th?
Well, you know, there's a lot of great candidates out there, but I'd like to know what you think. Who do you think would be the 12th team?
I think I'm kind of along the same lines as Kevin. You know, BYU makes a lot of sense, good national brand, national following. You know, I think there are things you could get around with BYU. The Sunday not playing, the BYU TV, if you don't have a conference network. I think probably BYU and Cincinnati would make the most sense, but I'd keep an eye on Houston because they're a program on the rise, and even UConn. It's a basketball powerhouse.
And I'd like to throw in Central Florida because then you could get into the Florida recruiting market just as the SEC got into the Texas market with A&M.
Okay, now we're almost out of time.
Okay.
What do you both think about the TV component of this? Because you can't have expansion and Longhorn Network, and then we know OU President David Boren wants a Big 12 network. Real quickly, can this happen with LHN?
No, I don't think so.
No?
It's a non-starter because Texas is just not going to give it up, even if the conference promised them equal money, because they don't want to give up that exposure they get in recruiting.
That's true. I agree. They're not going to give that up. Okay, finally, the meetings are at the Four Seasons here at the end of the month. Do we think anything happens, yes or no?
A lot of talk, but no white smoke out of the chimney. Okay. Nothing gets done.
Yeah, no action. It's tabled for later in the year.
I would agree. Nothing probably happens at these meetings. Well, listen, there's going to be a lot more on Hook'em.com. Keep it there for all the news and information coming out of Las Colinas.